Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Gampel, and I'm a member of the Alumni Engagement Team here at York University. Welcome to the third and final session of our fall GRADitude speaker series. Tonight, we will hear from a wonderful alumna, Basia Pozin, on the topic of money matters for new grads. So a warm welcome goes out to our newest grads, the class of 2020. You certainly have graduated in unique times. We officially welcome you to our 330,000 person alumni family. Tonight, we are not all in the same location, so I would like to recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York acknowledges its presence on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. Friends, if at any time you need help with this experience, feel free to click on the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen and enter your question. We have a team behind the scenes who is ready to help you with any question that you may have. We are proud to have tonight as our sponsor, MBNA. At the end of this session, you'll be able to answer a poll question for a chance to win one of 4 prepaid MasterCard gift cards from the MBNA Rewards Platinum Plus MasterCard. You might not know that as York alumni, you can access many discount and partner offers, and MBNA is the official credit card for our alumni and friends. So stay till the end of the panel for your chance to win, and as you will learn in the session, use your credit responsibly. You each came here for a reason, and though we can't see you, we do want to do our best to provide you with helpful advice and insight. So if you can just take a moment and use the Q&A function to answer, what do you hope to get out of this session this evening? So use that Q&A button and just write us what you're hoping to learn. What brought you here tonight? What do you hope to get out of this session? So as you think about that and as you write in your answers, I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker. I'm absolutely honored to introduce you to Basia. Basia, thank you so much for being here with us today. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Basia is a passionate banking professional who noticed early in her career that many Canadians lacked basic money management skills. After graduating from the Schulich School of Business, Basia pursued a national management training program for consumer banking at one of the largest Canadian banks. Upon completing the training, Basia became the youngest branch manager in Canada at age 23. Financial literacy is not an official part of our academic curriculum in schools, and as such, many Canadians are left to fend for themselves. This is the inspiration behind Money Matters, where Basia strives to make financial literacy accessible in a non-intimidating environment. Basia, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hand the floor over to you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to have all of you join here today. So what we're going to be going through today is essentially a crash course on financial literacy. I hope you guys have fun. I hope you learn something. And at the end, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. So please do if you have any about the content or financial literacy in general. So a little bit about me, just to get to know you guys a little bit better, rather for you guys to get to know me a little bit better. I am a graduate from the Schulich School of Business, so part of York University, and I finished in 2017 my BBA. As mentioned, I went on to become a branch manager. I did that for 3 years right after that, I went on to commercial banking, which is where I have been now for a month, so less than a year. And I've also been the founder of Money Matters, which is a financial literacy educational program that I run basically online these days. It used to be more in person, and I do financial literacy engagements with different companies as well as a way to just share the knowledge that I gained while I was in branch banking. As a fun fact, I love the performing arts, especially dance and musical theater. So So the agenda for today, we're basically going to go through 3 different topics, and they get increasingly more complex as we move through the content. So the first topic is going to be budgeting. It's going to be all about tips and tricks for making your budget foolproof. Then we're going to move on to building good credit history and how you can build good credit history. And then we're going to finish off with an introduction to investing. And at the end, I'll let you know how you can learn more. If you're interested in this kind of content, you're welcome to join the Money Matters course, which runs for 4 weeks, and I'll talk more about that at the end. So to start off, I want to share a few facts with you guys that are kind of shocking. And when I started working in branch banking, I was really surprised to see how prevalent financial illiteracy is. If you read up what's on the board, we see here that more than 50% of Canadians live paycheck to paycheck, which is a really daunting thing to think of because there's always going to be unexpected expenses that come up. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, then there's definitely a risk that you're living with. And that causes a lot of stress and anxiety and really just lowers your quality of life. And a lot of the issue is not in how much money you make, but it's in how you manage your money. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Another kind of shocking fact is that over 30% of Canadians have no retirement savings at all. So a lot of us, millennials, we graduate, you finally get a job, we start thinking about the next big step in our financial journey. And that's usually to buy a property, maybe buy a car first, then buy a property. And we leave, retirement off to the back burner, but then we never revisit that. And next thing you know, you're 40, 50 years old and retirement is actually pretty close on the horizon. And if you didn't plan for that well in advance, then that's another, really financial risk that you're taking on that's kind of unnecessary, because if you think about it from the get-go, then you're going to be so much better off when it gets time for you to retire. So Money Matters, our mission is to help you feel in control of your finances, not the other way around. So everybody here today, I hope that you leave this session feeling a little bit more confident about what you can do to set yourself up for success. So let's get right into our first topic, which is budgeting. So budgeting, as a concept, it's very easy to understand. Everybody understands the concept of having a budget, of having a certain amount of money that you plan to spend in different areas of your life. But the tricky part is the actual implementation. So what I want to do is bring us right down to the basics to understand what is the fundamental concept of budgeting and how can you implement it into your day-to-day life. So before we can talk about budgeting, we need to understand what is at the root of it, and that's our cash flow. So cash flow is the flow of money into and out of your bank account. Pretty simple concept. Money comes in, money goes out. But what happens in the middle? So if we focus first on the input, our cash inflow, that can come from multiple sources. It could be from your employment, which is primarily where your cash income is going to come from. You could be self-employed, so perhaps you do something on the side, or maybe your main job is an entrepreneurial endeavor. It could be investment income. You could get gifts, you could inherit money, and of course, unexpected or lottery winnings are always nice as well. The key with your cash inflow is that you're recording everything in your budget. So it's not just, okay, I made this much money this month, because then what happens is if you made money in other areas, you start to kind of think that that's play money. You don't really account for it. You can do different things, but then usually people overestimate how much play money they have. So if they, let's say, won, a scratch lotto ticket and it was $20, then they'll be like, oh, I won $20. I can go splurge and get my nails done. And then the next day it's like, oh, remember that $20 I won? I think I'm going to go out for dinner tonight. So if it's not accounted for in your budget, when you're actually sitting down to create one, and we'll talk about what it looks like, you start to sort of overestimate how much money you have if you don't track every dollar in and every dollar out. So then on the flip side, we've got our cash outflow, and these are our expenses. So expenses can be money that has been spent, which is the majority of what your cash outflow will be. It could be donations. You could also invest your money. So it's not necessarily leaving your account, but it needs to be accounted for in your budget. So how much are you putting aside towards investment that you're not spending in your day-to-day life? And of course, you can be putting money aside towards savings. Savings and investing are very similar concepts, and I would get into a little bit more detail, but in the interest of time, we'll leave that for another day. But in terms of your spending categories, that's where I'd really like to focus the bulk of our concentration on today in the budgeting topic, because budgeting is all about managing your expenses. So we've got 2 categories. They're called fixed and variable expenses. So maybe you've heard these terms before if you did maybe an accounting course at one point. If you haven't, then listen up. So a fixed expense is an expense that doesn't change much or at all month to month. So what that means is basically if you have a Netflix subscription, you're committed to paying that every single month, no matter what. So that's a fixed expense. If you have variable expenses, not if, your variable expenses will be the expenses that change month to month. So those ones would be things like grocery shopping, because how much you spend on groceries is different month to month. Shopping for clothing, anything recreational, anything discretionary is usually variable. But also it could be things that you need. So things like maybe your utilities, they fluctuate a lot in month to month. That would be a variable expense. That's still something that you need for, to be spending money on every month. So the key here in understanding your fixed and variable expenses is that when you're budgeting, you want to group them together. So you can see, first of all, what is fixed? What are you going to have to spend money on every single month, no matter how much money you make? And you want to make sure that that total for your fixed expenses is less than 50% of your total monthly income to make sure that you have enough left over for your variable expenses, that you can sort of, play with a little bit more, and your savings, which is what you really want to be prioritizing. So now that we understand cash flow, money in, money out, we want to see how we would actually organize it in a budget. So a budget is essentially a plan for your cash flow. It's how you decide to spend the money that's coming in or what you do with it. So what would that look like? So we're going to go through a little example. This is obviously a simplified version. Your budget would be a little bit more complex, but this is just to get an idea of what it looks like. Another thing I just want to mention, sometimes people ask me, is there a special software I should be using for creating a budget? The answer is no, it really doesn't need to be too complex. In fact, the more complex you make it, the more intimidated you're going to be from your own budget. It shouldn't be something stressful. It shouldn't be something, super fancy. Any spreadsheet works. So you can use Excel, you can use Google Sheets, you can use numbers if you have a Mac. Any spreadsheet, as long as you're able to organize the numbers, have running totals, it will be just fine. So if we go through it step by step, the first thing you want to do when building a budget is organize by month. So if you're starting, let's say 2021 is going to be the year you start budgeting. So you're going to start with January and run all of the months through the first row. Step number 2 is going to be your income. So in this example, this individual has 2 jobs. So they have a main job, their employment, and they also have a side job that kind of fluctuates in income. And then you're going to tally up your total income. For me personally, in my budget, I also have in that like cash in or my income area, I also include things like if I redeem points on PC MasterCard or if I get cashback points on my Visa, I include that in there as well because that's money that I did make and I will have bought something for that points redemption. So if I'm going to be calculating the money out from that purchase, I also want to be calculating the money in. And that way it's a very comprehensive overview of your money in and money out. And then step 3, the fun part, is the expenses. So this person did not group their fixed and variable expenses separately. So shame on them, but you will because you know better. And at the bottom, you want to total your expenses. So I have a total running for my variable expenses, and then I have a total running for my fixed. It's actually fixed and variable, and then a total for all expenses. Okay. So once you know how much you've spent, your mentality might be the following. Here's my income. Here's how much I spent. Here's how much I have left for savings. What I would encourage you to do, don't think of it that way, because who's to say that your expenses aren't going to end up being more than your income or equal to your income, and you're not going to have enough or anything left for your savings. So if you want to be super disciplined about your money management, what you should do is think about your savings goals. What is it that you want to save for, and how much do you want to save? And that way you can also think about how much time do you plan to save for this for, and that will give you an idea of how much you need to be saving every month to reach your goal. So for example, if I want to buy a house in 5 years and I know that I'm going to need, let's say, I don't know, $100,000 to put down as a down payment for my purchase. I need to start now, right? It's not going to be me in 5 years thinking like, oh, let's see if I have enough savings to buy a house. That's the kind of thing you want to plan for. So you would take that $100,000 divided by the number of months over the 5 years, which is 60 months, and see what that number is of savings per month. And that's what you subtract from your income right away. And that's what you plan around. So what you have left over after you've taken out your savings is is what you're going to allocate towards your expenses. And that way you will actually be meeting your savings goals. That might also be a reality check. It might be, an opportunity for you to see that, hey, I really don't have that much money to be saving every month. There's no way I'm going to be able to cover my day-to-day expenses. In which case, okay, then maybe you have to push out the, time frame of your goal. Maybe you have to find a way to cut back on your expenses or a way to increase your income or all of the above. But at least you're planning proactively, and that's what's going to help you be successful with your money, is when you're thinking ahead. So as a summary for our first topic, a budget is used to track your cash flow. Identify your monthly savings allocation first, then allocate the remainder to your expenses. Try to identify all of your fixed expenses first, which should be equal to or less than 50% of your total income, and then see how much you have left over for variable, also known as discretionary expenses. This will help you avoid overspending or unnecessary spending and will be your first step to setting the way for your financial success. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what budgeting is all about. And we're going to now move on to our second topic of the evening, which is credit history. This is actually probably my favorite topic because I think it's one of the most sort of secretive topics. Nobody really knows what is the exact algorithm for how credit history is calculated, and people don't really know how to manage their credit history. So I'm here to help you debunk the myths that are out there. So what is credit history? Credit history is basically a track record of how well you manage your credit products. So that should bring up the next question, which is, well, what are credit products, or what specifically falls in the credit bureau category of credit products? So first of all, it's things like mortgages, your home equity lines of credit, things that you probably don't yet have as a new grad. Then there's also loans, things that you're probably more familiar with, like car loans, student loans, things like that. That's all recorded on your credit bureau as well. And then there's also credit cards. So if you've got any Visas, American Express cards, or MasterCards, that is all recorded as well. And finally, and this one is often to people's surprise, bills like energy bills, phone bills, internet, TV are also recorded on your credit bureau. You might be thinking, why would you record bills on a credit bureau if I'm not borrowing money from TELUS or Fido or Rogers? That's actually incorrect. You are technically borrowing money from them because the way billing companies work is they give you the service first for the month, then at the end they bill you. So if you technically have the option of not paying the bill at the end of the month, even though you've used their services, so they sort of lent you their services, which have a cash value. And if you don't pay for it at the end, then you're sort of indebted to them. And so these are recorded on your credit bureau to make sure that people are taking accountability for paying their bills and not taking advantage of billing companies. Okay, so all of those are recorded on your credit bureau, which basically is like, think of it as an adult report card that tracks how well you manage your credit products and your bills. So why is credit history important? You might be thinking, that's fine and dandy, but why would I really care? Well, you would really care because credit history serves as a gauge for one's character. So it has a lot of major implications because it's a reflection of you. First and foremost, it affects your ability to borrow in the future. So if you want to get a car loan or a car lease in the future, or a mortgage, which, given our real estate market today, everybody's going to need a mortgage at some point if you're planning on buying property, it really is going to impact your ability to do that. Because if your credit history is weak or low, then the banks won't lend to you and you won't be able to get a car loan or a car lease or a mortgage. The next implication is actually employment opportunities. This is also something that's I've personally found surprising when I learned that my employer ran a credit check on me before taking me on. So the reason for that is because employment opportunities are affected by this because the person hiring you wants to make sure that there's no signs of financial distress in your life. Because if there are, so if let's say you're, continuously not paying back your loans or your credit cards, you've got racked up bills that you haven't, even made the minimum payments on, you are, by profile of that kind of individual, you are at an increased likelihood to be engaging in things like theft, fraud, and, other poor activity that employers obviously want to filter out. And finally, It also affects your ability to rent. So you might be thinking, oh, I'm never going to be able to buy, I'll just rent places. So maybe you think that the credit history is not so relevant for you, but it actually would impact your ability to rent as well, because landlords also want to filter for credit worthy tenants, because this would decrease their risk that the person they're taking as a tenant is going to not pay. So as you can see, your credit history really impacts a lot of different areas of your life, and you want to be making sure that you're taking good care of it right from the get-go. So let's talk about how you can do that. So firstly, before we actually talk about how you can do that, let's talk about how your credit score is calculated. So it's based on 5 key things, 5 key pillars. The first one and the most important one, so these are also in order of what impacts your score the most to what it has a smaller and smaller impact, but still an impact. So the most impactful part is the repayment history. Do you have any late or missed payments? Are you paying your balances in full and on time? The second pillar is all about your utilization. So are you maxing out all of your credit limits and carrying a balance every single month? Or are you able to, not bring yourself that close to the limit and just have, a reasonable usage and then you pay it back? And then we've got total number of products. So are you able to manage several different credit products responsibly? That's kind of to show that if somebody has a credit bureau with just one credit card on it, they're going to have, even if it's well managed, a slightly lower score than somebody that has maybe 2 or 3 well managed products. But of course, 2 or 3 poorly managed products is worse than 1 good, well managed product. And then the next part here is about total number of inquiries. So every time you want to submit a credit application, so you want to get a credit card, you submit an application. You want to get a car loan, you submit an application. You want to check your credit score, you need to get your credit report. Each time somebody basically looks at your score, that is called an inquiry. And that will impact your credit score as well by about 5 points. And you're going to see, how impactful is 5 points in a moment. But the idea here is if you're looking at your credit score too much and you're constantly monitoring, or you're going from bank to bank to apply for a credit card every single month, then you're what's called a credit seeker, which is somebody that's desperate for credit. And that does not show good credit character, and that would impact your credit score as well. So our next and final point is the length of your credit history. The longer your history is, the stronger your credit score is going to be, which is why as soon as somebody turns 18, I always recommend to them they need to get a credit card, because that's the only credit product they can get at that age. And that's going to be how they can build their credit history and make sure that it's the maximum length of time so that it's as strong as it can be for whenever they need to leverage a strong credit report for their future. So all these 5 factors basically go through an algorithm, and I do not know exactly what that algorithm is, but some sophisticated computer will run it and you will get a credit score that's going to be between 300 and 900. So as you can see, 5 points isn't a huge impact to your score, but if it's consistently impacting you by about 5 points, so let's say you're running your credit report every single month, then you will slowly be going down towards the lower end of the spectrum. So what are the thresholds? A score between 300 to 649 is considered a poor score. A score between 650 to 749 is a good score. It's a decent score. And if your score is over 750, so 750 to 900, that is considered an excellent score, basically a perfect score. Okay, so you definitely don't want to be over there in the poor range, because no bank will lend to you if your score is below 650. That's a lending policy that's standard across all the banks. So you won't even be able to get a credit card if your score is below that. And then if you can get your way all the way over beyond the 750 mark, then you're in really good hands and your credit score will not negatively impact your ability to do anything. Okay. So some best practices about how you can try and get your score to be as strong as possible in that green 750 to 900 range. First of all, you want to pay all your credit products in full and on time. Second of all, you want to set up automated payments on all of your credit cards so that you're automatically paying the balance off at the end. Now, I will be the first to tell you that that is totally a personal preference. If that's something that you don't think is necessary for you, if you think you're disciplined enough and you're mindful enough of your transactions in your accounts that you will manually be able to make the payments every month and you're not worried about, forgetting to make the payment on time, then maybe don't. But if you are concerned that maybe you have a couple credit cards with different institutions, sometimes you forget to check the statement at the end of the month, you can just set up automatic payments from your checking account, create the bill, automate the bill, and then that way you don't have to worry about it at all. And finally, try to keep your utilization within 75% of your credit limits. So what that basically means is if you have a credit card with a $1,000 limit, try not to use more than $750 of your limit at any given time, because that will actually help you build your credit history faster, okay? Because it shows good credit management. And finally, it's important to note that you cannot escape your credit history. It's connected to your personal identification, which is your social insurance number, and it follows you wherever you go. So sometimes people think, oh, I really messed up with my credit card at CIBC. I'm just going to hop across the street and get a credit card with RBC. No, you won't be able to do that, because they're actually going to pull your credit score based on your personal information. And if your score is too low, they're not going to lend to you either. So you want to be super diligent about this early on, because it's really hard to repair a poorly managed credit score, as it takes 7 years for an item to fall off your credit bureau. So it will haunt you. So don't put yourself in that position. So for your future, make sure you use your credit card regularly to build your credit history. Make sure you pay your credit card bill on time and in full. Don't use more than 75% of your credit limit at a given time. And keep tabs on your credit card transactions to prevent unauthorized transactions from going unnoticed. So just check up on your transaction history. Make sure you're familiar with everything going through on your card, because if you are not, and it's something unauthorized that went through, you do have recourse with your bank. You can call them and they will give you your money back, but only if you call within 30 days. So that's another part of good credit management, because sometimes if a transaction goes through that you didn't authorize and you therefore don't pay your bill because it's a card that you don't use much, that transaction will still impact your credit history, because now it's going to be going month to month, unpaid, collecting interest and being delinquent on your credit bureau. Delinquent meaning you didn't make the payment on time. So definitely something you want to be making sure that you're keeping close tabs on. So that brings us to our final topic of the evening, which is investing. I feel like I'm covering so much content. I wish I could see your faces and see if you guys are like, whoa, slow down. But hopefully you're following along, because I'm going to keep going. So investing. Investing is a very different topic. It's all about putting your money into something and hoping that it grows over time. So it's actually a very widely applicable topic. It's not just related to money. And there's a basic investment model that you can kind of follow to really understand how this concept applies to, again, all areas of life. So you have an input to start off. So an input is any resource. It could be money, it could be time, it could be energy, it could be your attention. Right now, you are investing in yourself. You're giving me your time and your energy and your attention, and you're developing a skill and you're gaining knowledge. So you're investing in yourself. That input gets placed into a medium, which is a means for promoting resource growth or improvement. So that can be an investment vehicle if it's your money that you're inputting towards something to grow. It could be an educational course. It could be an athletic activity. It's something that fosters improvement. And then there's an output. So that could be monetary value, it could be knowledge, it could be skills. So right now you can, very clearly, hopefully see that you are investing in yourself. Your input is your time, your energy, your attention. The medium is an educational endeavor, a seminar, a webinar. And then the output is your knowledge and your skills. And hopefully also monetary value, because you're going to just be a pro at managing your money afterwards. So we're obviously going to focus on financial investing, given this is a financial literacy seminar. And let's talk about what you can invest in. So we've got different investment products. We obviously don't have the time today to get into too much nitty-gritty about each of these, but I'm going to try to give you a high-level overview. And if you're interested and you want to learn more about this stuff, I hope you join me for a course where we can really dive deep. So the investment products go as follows. There's stocks, which we have all probably heard about. Maybe some of us even have investments in stocks. Then there's something called mutual funds. Then there's something called exchange traded funds, or ETFs. Then there's bonds and GICs. So these different investment products can be categorized into two major investment categories. The first is all these three at the top, which fall under the topic of equity investing. Okay, equity investing just means that you're invested in the stock market. So at the basic level, one stock is an equity investment. A mutual fund is a combination of stocks. So again, you're invested in the stock market, and an exchange traded fund is a different way of investing in the stock market as well. So they all have to do with stocks. The lower level there, bonds and JCs, are what we call fixed income investing. We unfortunately won't get a chance to dive deeply into what fixed income investing is, but it's not investing in the stock market. It's a very different kind of investing. It's a low risk, low return type of investment. So let's talk about equity investing. So as mentioned, equity investing refers to investing in the stock market, and that requires you to understand what is a stock. So a stock represents a small ownership stake of a company, which is called a share. And investors purchase stocks of companies that they think will go up in value, which makes sense, right? You're risking your money. You hope that the risk is going to be worth it. So you're only going to be putting it towards a promising firm, either a company that is already stable and, is going to give you a steady growth, or maybe a company that's newer on the market, but you think there's lots of potential if you've got that kind of risk appetite. So right now, a lot of people are putting lots of money towards things like marijuana companies, because that's been, starting to be a little bit more regulated and be a little bit more prominent as an investment opportunity. Bitcoin was a big deal. Like that was also kind of a speculative investment like that. Now we've got a bit of a spike in investments going towards medical research companies trying to get a COVID vaccine going. So those are kinds of examples of people putting their money towards something they think is going to go up shortly. Different risk appetites. You can definitely, think about how much risk you're comfortable with taking on to figure out what kind of investment you would want to put your money towards. So in equity investing, it's really important to understand that there's no guarantee that your stock will rise in value. Okay. So let's talk about the difference between stocks versus mutual funds versus ETFs at a high level. Won't get too nitty-gritty today. But a stock represents one company. So I can buy a stock of Apple. I can buy a stock of Amazon. I can buy a stock of any publicly traded company. A mutual fund is not one company. It represents a group of different stocks or different investment holdings, just a different way of saying the same. And it's actively managed by basically somebody that's called a portfolio manager that's sitting up in head office, whatever financial institution they work for, and managing that whole group of investments. And you pay a small fee of about 1.5% on average towards this portfolio manager so that they actively manage what stocks are inside of your portfolio. So I personally, I own mutual funds. I think they're a great way to do what's called passive investing, where you don't have to actively really think about it. Put your money in there. Don't worry about it. It's being actively managed. Check maybe on a quarterly basis to make sure, your fund is growing in value. But it's a nice way to kind of dip your toes in the market. And it has a really low barrier to entry. The minimum investment is only $100. So you can definitely, open a TFSA with any bank, put $100 into a mutual fund and see how it grows for you and how it performs. Now, there is also something called an ETF, which is different than a mutual fund because it's not actively managed. So you'll see the third point there says passively managed, which means an ETF is also a group of investments, but it's following an index. So if you guys have heard the term TSX composite, we have, the Toronto Stock Exchange, we've got an index of how, is the Canadian market doing. So an ETF basically just copies the composition of a particular index. So it could be the TSX, it could be the New York Stock Exchange, it could be any index at all. There's really no limit to what, is what's being mimicked within an ETF. But it's just copying some existing index, and it is just either going to grow along with that index or it's going to go slowly down, depending on how the market is doing. So because it's not actively managed, there's a smaller fee of about 0.5%. But historically, it's hard to compare mutual funds versus ETFs because there are so many out there and there are different levels of risk and different levels of, active management. But overall, what I've seen is that mutual funds do outperform ETFs a little bit, which makes sense because they're actively managed. And that's net of the fee, even after you pay a slightly higher fee. Okay. So I hope that wasn't too much of an overwhelming amount of information. If it was, I apologize, but I tried to jam pack this with as much as I possibly could to help you guys take as much away as you can from this lesson. If you'd like to learn more, I do hope that you join a course. It works largely like this, where it's a Zoom class, it's live, I instruct it, and we have, an opportunity to ask questions, have a little bit more engagement because it's obviously in smaller groups. And I'll give you some details now of how you can sign up if it's something that you would like to do. So the Money Matters course is a 4-week session where we dive into some of these topics deeper and also some other topics that we didn't get a chance to cover today. It's taught live by me. The classes are 1 hour a week. The cost is $120, but I am happy to say that I am offering you guys 50% off for taking the time to come here today. I'd like to reward you also as, a York alumni sisterhood, brotherhood, friendship. I'm offering you guys 50% off if you use the coupon code YorkUWebinar. It's not case sensitive, and you're all going to get instructions at the end on how you can leverage this coupon code to sign up for the class. And just to quickly take you through the steps, the way you would do it, you're welcome to follow along now if you want to sign up. I do cap it after a certain capacity, so depending on how many people come, you might be waitlisted for a future class. And the way to do it is you go to www.moneymattersclasses.com. I feel like a commercial. And the dates are the next 4 Sundays. So starting this coming Sunday, the 29th, the classes are going to be 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. for 4 consecutive Sundays. So a good thing to do to prep you right for 2021. So we're going on November 29th, December 6th, December 13th, and December 20th. And to register, you go to the website, moneymattersclasses.com. You're going to click on the register icon, which is at the top banner. You are then, and you're going to get these exact screenshots, but just to run you through the process, you're going to see under the register tab, there is a class called Money Matters ages 18 to 29. So it's the young adult session. And you would click register. As a side note, it's okay if you're, over 29, it's okay if you're 17, but I'd say, it's okay if you're a little bit older. If you're a little bit younger, join the high school session. I don't think anybody on this call should be that young, but if you have, thoughts about somebody that you want to share the class with, you're welcome to do so, but just make sure everyone's joining the appropriate age group. And then once you click register, it's going to bring you to this checkout page. You're going to click checkout, and then you're going to have the opportunity to fill out your personal information. And under the coupon code area, you're going to enter YorkUWebinar, and that is going to give you 50% off. So it's only going to cost you $60. And the shipment method, you're not getting anything shipped. I don't know why you have to choose it, but you do. It is the standard shipping, which is $0. Just a heads up if that throws you off. So that does conclude the presentation for today, my friends. I hope you stay in touch. You're welcome to add me on LinkedIn. My information's up on the board. You can add me on Instagram, my Money Matters page, or my personal page. You can email me. I'd really love to be a resource for all of you. If you have any questions, if you want to join a class, if you have questions about the class, you're welcome to reach out. And I think now you're also going to get an opportunity to ask some questions live. So I'll pass it back over to Allison.
Thank you so much, Basia. And folks, I apologize if my microphone was not working properly. Hopefully it's fixed now that I have some handy earplugs in. Basia, thank you so much for that information. I know it was, but in my mid-40s, I can certainly attest to the wisdom of what you're teaching young people. And it's certainly wonderful to hear that people are getting that knowledge and to see that so many of our York grads are interested. Okay, I'm told that it's still bad. Sorry, guys. I'm going to talk less and let Basia talk more. So we do have some questions coming from our audience. I'm just going to read out a couple of questions. The first one is, hi, Basia. Thanks for hosting a wonderful session. What are your thoughts on buying cryptocurrency? Is it something to invest in like stocks, and do you recommend it?
Okay, so if I heard that correctly, the question is, what is my opinion on investing in cryptocurrencies? Is it a good investment? Is that the question? Okay, awesome. So, it's funny, I get this question so much, and I will be totally transparent with you in saying that cryptocurrencies are not within my domain. I work in a very traditional institution, which is a bank, a traditional bank. And so we don't advise on very speculative investments because we're all about, balanced investing. So I can tell you all about the stock market, but I can't tell you what to invest in the stock market. So I can't say if it's a good or a bad investment because I know it's so speculative, it's unregulated, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen in the future of cryptocurrencies. I will say that it hasn't been as much of a hype anymore. I don't hear as much cryptocurrency talk going around. But if it's something you're interested in, I would say read up on it. And if you're curious, put a little bit of money in. If you're curious about it, go for it. But definitely don't put all of your savings into something super speculative because the risk is always there.
Thank you for that. Okay, next question is a little more basic. The question is just wondering exactly how one can invest in stocks. What's the process?
That is a great question. Okay, so I actually go through the process in my course. So if you really want to kind of follow along, you can learn a step by step, but on a high level, what you would need is what's called a trading account. And the way that you would open a trading account is by either going to a brokerage or a bank. So every one of the major banks they offer trading accounts or brokerage accounts. You can refer to them either way. They're basically interchangeable terms. So for example, BMO has their investor line, TD has TD Waterhouse, direct investing. So you would basically just need to open that kind of account. It doesn't have to be through a bank. You can go through other avenues. Like if you want to manage your investments yourself and you don't really mind not having, a branch as a point of contact, you can open through discount brokerages like Questrade or Wealthsimple. So you need a trading account. And then once you got a trading account going, you can buy stocks, and every platform will guide you on how to buy stocks through their respective platform.
For that. Another question, and I'm not sure exactly that I understand it, but it's asked, can you recommend a user-friendly robo-advisor?
Yeah, that is a great question. So I will be honest again that I don't specialize in robo-advising because I am a real-life human advisor. But I will say that I've heard some really great things about Wealthsimple. I personally don't use them, so I can't, really talk to them in detail. But from people that have, I've heard that it's a great way to kind of have a passive investment strategy. So if it's something you're curious in, I check out Wealthsimple.
Thank you. Oh, the questions keep coming in. For those of you who don't know how to type in your questions, just type them into the Q&A and I'm reading them out. Basia, can I ask you, one of the questions coming in is, can you explain the term stock option or perhaps related to ETF? So stock option.
Yeah, so with stock options, it's a little bit beyond the scope of today's class, so I'm not going to get into the details of it. But it is a more advanced or a more sophisticated way of investing where you're not just buying for the going price of a stock. You basically can put in a put or a call option where you're interested only in buying if the stock drops below a certain value or goes up beyond a certain value. And there's a lot of strategy involved with stock options. So a little bit beyond the scope of today's class, but that's just to give you an idea.
Thank you. Thank you. An interesting question is, can we trust our credit since Equifax was hacked? Are the numbers accurate?
Great question. Yes, the numbers are accurate. So there's actually only two providers in Canada that give you credit scores, or that are the widely used credit score institutions, and that's Equifax and TransUnion. So either one of those are trustworthy resources that you can use. And yes, there was a breach at one point with Equifax. They have since remedied the situation, and the credit reports are still accurately reflecting everybody's scores, and they are the ones that all major banks would use when they make a lending decision. So yes, you're okay to use it.
Okay, that's good news. Okay, so there's more questions about credit and things like that, and I think you gave a lot of information that people didn't know. So there's a great question coming in saying, I would like to know if one late payment for a mobile bill would impact the credit score badly.
Great question. So no, it wouldn't impact it badly at all. So really what you want to think about when you think about credit scores is the fact that it's a reflection of your character. So it's about repeat offenses almost, and how bad is the offense. So if you just forget to pay one bill a day late, it's really not a huge deal. Yes, you might get a little bit, a couple points down, not a huge deal because you can recover that with time. But the problem becomes when you miss a whole bunch of payments time and time again, then it starts to impact you more and more drastically. And if you just don't pay something at all, so let's say you forget about a credit card, or you're being a little bit bad about your score and you decide that you don't care, you're just not going to pay it because you don't want to, that's when things start to basically get written off, where the billing company or the credit company loses all hope that they're ever going to get money back from you. And they basically give you a big fat, think of it as like an F on your report card. And that's hard to recover from. That's the kind of thing that's going to impact you for 7 years. The little, dips here and there are not a huge deal because you can recover that fairly quickly. Great question.
It really is. I know there's a product called Credit Karma. In fact, I think I just signed up for it. Does Credit Karma deduct 5 points every time I check it?
That's a great question. I actually don't know. I don't have the insider information for Credit Karma. They're a third-party institution. I wouldn't be able to tell you that, but because I'm not too sure how Credit Karma works. But if you are pulling a credit report every time, it would be a hard pull on your score, which would deduct about 5 points from your overall credit score.
Thank you. More and more questions about credit cards. Are credit cards from different banks counted as different credit products, or are all credit cards counted as one credit product?
Great question. Every credit card is its own credit product, even if it's from the same bank. If you've got 2 credit cards from the same institution, they're still treated as separate products, and you have to treat each one with care to build up your credit history.
Okay. And if you generally pay a bill every 2 months, what kind of impact would that have on someone? So let's say your Rogers bill, you pay it every 2 months instead of every month.
If you pay a bill every 2 months instead of every month when it's due, what kind of impact would that have on your score? Okay, so that would not be a very strong score because you are consistently missing payments. Like I said, I don't have the algorithm, so I can't tell you exactly like, oh, if you're missing every other payment, that's going to bring you down, 7.5 points each time. I don't know exactly, but I do know that if you've got consistently missed payments, that will have a significantly negative impact on your score. So that's why my biggest recommendation to you is to pay your bills on time as much as you can.
Absolutely. Thank you. So should people use a financial advisor through a bank or a private person? What's the difference?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? I would say that it's person to person dependent, not source dependent. I'd say I've seen some really fantastic financial advisors at banks. I've seen some really crappy ones as well. And same for the private sector. I've seen some really great financial advisors that work independently, and I've seen some really crappy ones. So what I would say is go to somebody that either has been recommended to you or somebody that you did a free consultation with first, and you talk to them about your full financial picture, your goals, what your situation is, and then you kind of get a feel for them. Don't commit to anything in the first appointment. That would be my biggest advice, because you don't want to be locked into a relationship that you're unhappy with. So every single advisor should give you the opportunity to have a free consult. If you're happy with them and their services, then fantastic, you can develop that relationship with them. But it's really not about where they're coming from. It's not, banks versus the private sector. It's about the person that you're dealing with.
Right. So they all have access to the same products?
So they would never all have access to the same products. So it depends on everybody's license. So that's something you do want to be kind of looking out for. So some advisors can only sell mutual funds. Some advisors can only sell insurance products. Some advisors can sell both. Some advisors can only sell investment products of their institutions. Some have a general license. So it gets a little bit more involved because there are so many different ways that you can specialize in the field, but you do want to make sure that whoever you're dealing with is licensed. So you want to be, you can ask them, it's your prerogative as a client to say, hey, have you done your Canadian securities course? That's a good one. Or have you done the personal financial planning designation? Or you can just openly say, hey, what designations do you have to be a financial advisor? Right? You don't have to come off as catty, like you're vetting them or anything, but it's your prerogative to ask. And if you're not too sure what their qualifications are, then ask them, maybe go home, do some research on that qualification and see if you're comfortable with their domain.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. I'm going to read a question that just came in. It reads, I signed up with a credit fraud alert service that also provides me with my credit score. Does the fact that they have access to it mean that they keep inquiring about it? And by extension, that negatively impacts my credit score?
That's a great question. So if you give access to your credit bureau to a third-party agency, they do what's called a soft pull versus a hard pull. So they're not consistently pulling your score, but they just have continuous access. So it does hinder it a little bit on occasion because they'll refresh it like, every couple of months, but it's not a hard pull. It's not getting the full report every time. It's just getting the score. So it's not a huge concern. I actually think that's a relatively good thing to do. But it would impact it a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so we have two more questions. Folks, if anyone has additional questions, put them in now because we've only got a couple minutes left here. Callie is asking, could you provide an example of a 0.5% managed fee? I'm still not sure what you mean.
Yeah, of course. So the question was, can I provide an example of a 1.5% management fee?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So basically, when you invest, we'll use mutual funds because that's the one that I said has around a 1.5% management fee. When you buy a mutual fund, you have to pay for the person that is managing your money to be providing that professional service to you. So you might be asking, what is that 1.5% of? And that's a great question. It's not of your investment. So it's not like if I'm investing $1,000, I have to pay 1.5% of the $1,000 I put in. No, it's 1.5% of the return on your investment. So you actually never even see the fee. You don't really feel like you're paying it out of pocket because you're just getting the return net of the fee. So if you made $1,000 on your investment, then you're going to get 98.5% of that return back because 1.5% of the return goes into the pocket of the professional money manager that is managing your fund because we got to pay them for their service. The thing is, people sometimes complain saying like, oh, you know what, mutual funds have such high fees. Yeah, I agree there's a fee because you pay a fee to get any kind of service. But the question is, can you do a better job managing your own money? Will your investment outperform the mutual fund that's professionally managed in order for you to save that 1.5%? So if your mutual fund is returning 8% and you're pocketing a 6.5% return net of the fee, are you going to generate more than 6.5% as a return if you're going to be buying and managing your own stocks? Probably not. So I would kind of look at the performance of your mutual fund and see if it's, you know, if you're happy with it. And if you're happy with it, it's worth the fee.
Makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to leave us with a final question, which is, what kind of opportunities or experiences did you take personally that helped you get into your current position and get you to be an entrepreneur? You know, how do we, get a job and get to be more like you?
Oh, that's a nice question. I feel like that's a great question because I love to share about my experience. But it's also it was such a journey. So many different things happened. So what I would say is, I mean, for me personally, what did I do? I went to university. I did my undergrad. I did internships in the summers. So I worked at Deloitte. For one internship in Israel, I did an internship at Questrade. So I tried to get work experience while I was a student. I tried to take on leadership opportunities. So I was president of one of the clubs on campus. I started, I used to be a competitive gymnast. So I started a gymnastics program at a summer camp that I was working at. So it's kind of just trying to get all these different experiences, meet people, show that I can be a leader so that when it got time to full-time recruitment, I had all these different things that I could speak to about different experiences that I've had. I would say that it's again, very person to person dependent. I would say do things that make you happy, do things that, want to make you do your best. If going to, let's say case competitions, if you're in a business program, doesn't like spark your light and you're kind of just stressed every time, you don't enjoy the networking piece, then find a different way to network. That was me. I hated case competitions. I hated doing all those, super like business minded things for business school. And so I just found different things to do that made me happy, that still let me meet people and get experience and try to get leadership roles. And that would basically be my best advice to you. Do things that make you happy, spend your time wisely, spend your energy wisely, and it will lead you to good places because you're going to be motivated to do your best.
Basia, thank you so very much. We've loved having you with us today and look forward to seeing what you accomplish in your world. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Carrie, who hopefully has a better microphone than me, and she's going to conclude our evening. So Basia, on behalf of all of us, thank you very much. Over to you, Carrie.
Thanks so much, Basia, and thanks so much to the audience. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, so I'm stepping in to help out my colleague here. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and sharing your knowledge and insight. She's gone off screen. I don't know if you had any other final thoughts, Basia, or that you wanted to share.
I'm happy to share.
Okay.
Any final thoughts? I guess I just want to say thank you to everyone. I know it's an evening. Everybody is kind of ready for Christmas and ready to not have to turn on their brains so late at night. But I know that coming here shows that you are of the right character to get onto the right path with your careers and your personal finances. So I hope you took something away, and it was really my pleasure to be here. So thank you for taking the time to join.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you to our class of 2020 students, alumni and friends for joining us. We do have a question for you. Please answer in the Q&A box. The question is, what aspects of today's panel did you find most meaningful and helpful? And this, again, just really helps us plan our events moving forward and how we can tailor them for you. So you can go ahead and enter that in the Q&A box. And now from our wonderful partner and sponsor, MBNA, this is your chance to participate in a poll for a chance to win one of 4 $50 prepaid MasterCard gift cards. You should see the following poll on your screen. So the question is, what actions can you take that will help you have a better credit rating? A, never skip minimum payments on a bill. B, keep credit card balances low, 35% of the limit. C, have multiple credit accounts in good standing. Or D, all of the above. So we will notify the winners after the event via email. So check your email for that. Good luck. Feel free to share today's talk with your friends. It will be posted on our York Alumni YouTube channel. You may also join our LinkedIn group or follow us on Facebook by searching York University Alumni, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at York U Alumni. Feedback about this or any of our programming is always welcome and necessary. It can be sent to us on our social channels as listed before, or at alumni, sorry, just one moment, or at alumni@yorku.ca. We'll be sending a survey on the GRADitude speaker series by email shortly, and we welcome your feedback on these sessions. If you want to learn more about the alumni community, please visit us at alumniandfriends.yorku.ca. We are building events and services, especially to support our younger alumni, and would love to hear any suggestions you have to add to the complement that we offer. York's Career Center remains fully open to new alumni for 2 years after graduation, so visit them as well. Our favorite offering is the What Can I Do with My Degree section, and they have great webinars and drop-in sessions as well. So once again, thank you all so much for attending this evening's event. Wishing you all continued health and wellness during this time. Take care.